All right. Hey, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. We're back again for Flangers this week. And I'm Mitch. I work for Impress I'm in charge of all the marketing and some other things. And with me, we have Taylor. He's one of our engineers. I think you play like every instrument, don't you, Taylor?
Working on it.
Cool.
We'll get there someday.
My primary instrument is like sequencer. Somebody asks, I'm gonna be like, I play the sequencer. But yeah, the intro music was a modular patch I had going, mostly drums and then into this stereo flanger that I made on the ZOIA because I think drums sound really good with flangers, in my opinion. You can overuse them too, and like do over the top flangers with drums. I think they sound cool. And also, not to forget, Mickey Bones is with us again.
Hello.
Also known as Michael, our customer service and repair expert. And Michael, what's your primary instrument?
Guitar, but weird looping and effects and taking simple guitar stuff and just messing it up.
I like that. I play effects. I should have said that because I don't really play guitar. I like playing effects. Also, dry guitar I don't think I should ever play it. Anyway, so flangers today. I think we've got a lot to talk about with flangers. That like there's a lot we could do. I really want to go into the basics today and then show kind of how to make a patch that we're just going to go through a couple different things, but like I want to make a patch that I would be like proud to put up on patch storage. So we'll see if we can get to that. If we'll start with the basics and take questions and then move on from there. I put smeared repeats in the pedals are the best part of playing guitar. I agree. I put smeared repeats in the schedule, but today we're probably not going to get smeared repeats because flangers, there's a lot. So I'll do smeared repeats and more stuff on delay lines on a later episode. Also, next week, Taylor is going to do the mono guitar synth, which I'm excited for. We do have a last minute schedule change for that. He's going to do it at 3 Eastern instead of 7. But this will be up on YouTube, so you can watch it anytime. So yeah, flangers I feel like subtle flanging is like underrated. And I think I used to have like this bad impression of flangers because I think going to Guitar Center and like being like, I'm turning the feedback all the way up on a flanger and thinking that's what it should sound like. And it's just crazy. But crazy's fine, but that's all I used to think flangers were. Also, I used to think they were called flangers because it makes sense. Sometimes I even still call them flangers. What's that?
I said they're not flangers.
I think it's called a flanger actually, but I like flanger better. I don't care how you say it or how you pronounce anything really. We're not gonna gatekeep on like anything here. It's okay to say the wrong thing. I'm pretty sure I'd go to like Guitar Center and be like, I'd like to try the Boss Flanger, please. And like, yeah, no one was like, it's flanger. But anyway.
My friend used to call bass bass. I always thought that always irked me, but you gotta be accepting of your friends,
Fair enough. I mean, it's spelled the same.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's get into flangers, whatever you want to call them. So I'm going to load up a blank patch, and this is empty. And I'll do what I normally do, which is put the audio inputs and outputs up top. So whenever I place a module, again, I can put it anywhere. I like to put the audio inputs up top. So I'm going to click Interface Modules, select Audio Input, press down on the encoder. I want this. I've only got my left channel going right now. And then I'm going to press over here, and this is where I like to put my audio outputs. Always at the top. You can do whatever you want. You can put them anywhere. It helps kind of to have a system that that use the same thing every time. And then the thing, I had an issue with this earlier where I was trying to troubleshoot a patch, and it was just because I had the left output. I had the right input connected. So if you're having problems passing sound, a good way to check to make sure you're getting audio is to press that audio input. I'm going to strum my guitar, and you can see that I'm passing audio. So I know the ZOIA is getting audio. That's just really helpful for troubleshooting, and can save you a lot of time. Like if you have a big patch and then it's not working. But back to this patch. Flangers have a dry signal going through, and we can mix that with our delayed signal. Flangers do use a delay line like chorus and vibrato. We're going to modulate a delayed line again. So let's put up let's see if I can pull it up. The diagram, and there it is. This is a flanger. We've got, the audio input into an audio balance and if you're signed up for the Bootcamp email, I already sent you this. But the big thing about the flanger is it has a VCA feedback path into the delay line. The other thing about flangers is the delay time's usually between like less than 10 milliseconds. And so supposedly if you get over 20 milliseconds, it's more of a chorus. If you're not feeding it back with that VCA, if there's no feedback, I think it all sounds chorusy to me, but that's personal opinion. So this is the basic flanger we're going to make today. And then after we create it, I want to get into like ways to make it unique and different. So just some ideas to create your own unique flanger. So first I'm going to add an audio balance. So that would be an audio module because it's passing audio and it's not an effect. And there it is, audio balance. We're going to do it in mono, and I'm going to select done. And then I'm going to connect my input to my audio balance 1, and then my audio balance out to both the left and right channels. And the mix will control, the second input will be my delayed signal, and the mix will control the time between the delay and or the mix between the flange kind of delay and the dry signal. So what I want to do today is kind of also, I want to set it up as I'm going. I want to add the controls, so I'm not going back and adding different value controls. So I'm going to add a mix, and that way I can put these controls all on one page, and I have a control page that's ready to go, and I feel like I have a more usable, complete patch than if I didn't go through and add these as I go. So what I want is a control module. I want a value module, and I'm just going to use a bunch of values. And then this value I'm going to connect to the mix input at 100%. Now when I turn this knob, this value knob, it changes the mix. But you'll notice I've only got it at like 0.5, and that's it's mix at 100. I need to change the bias of this. So the bias was in the middle at 50%. And if I turn it down to 0, now this number, this value of 5.57 reflects the mix of 57. So I'm just going to put that at the middle at 50. Then I would label that by going into the edit menu, so I'm hitting shift and the pen and paper while pressing any of the buttons on the value, and going to name value and backspace. I'm not going to go through and write all the names of these right now, but since mix is only 3 letters, I can do it. So now I have a mix value knob, and I can place this on a page. I would normally place it on page 0, but I've got this on page 0. So I'll just place it on page 1 for the sake of speed today. So I'm going to move the module by selecting it, pressing shift plus the arrows there, and then page over. So I'm going to page to the second empty page, and I'll place my value module right there for the mix. So when I press this, I know it's controlling mix because I wrote mix on it. Back to the Flanger, excuse me. Next, we're going to add a delay line. So I'm going to press wherever I want my delay. I kind of like to keep them all on the left side, personal preference. Again, you can put them anywhere. Control modules, nope, audio modules, delay line. And this part's important. What the CV input you do want to set to linear, and then you want interpolation on. That's going to keep it like smooth as you modulate it, because we will be modulating the delay line. So there, and then the other big thing for a flanger is a VCA. So I'm going to place a VCA here, 1 in, 1 out, and I'm going to place an LFO, and then I'll connect them all. Control modules, LFO. And I'm going to do a triangle wave. And what I'll do is place I'll connect, let's connect the audio path first. So we've got our dry. Is that working? Yeah, it is. And let's connect our wet signal. So I'm going to connect the audio input up here to the delay line in. And I'll just press those. I want the connection strength at 100%. I'll connect that to the VCA, and I'll also connect it to input 2 of this audio balance. So delay out, audio balance in, and then that's already connected. The VCA is going to feed back into the delay line. So I'm going to connect that. This is one of the interesting things about ZOIA that I don't think kind of other semi-modular digital things can do, which is feedback paths. And it's really important for a flanger. It's actually vital for it. But you can feed things back into each other, pretty much almost anything you can connect, really. But that's kind of, I feel like, what makes the flange sound. The delay time we're going to bias to, I'm going to put it at about 10 milliseconds. Well, let's do like 6. And then I'm going to connect that LFO output to the delay time input. And if I connect it at 100%, I'm going to have something. I don't want that. So what I need to do is, when I press these two, the connection strength comes up, and I'm just going to roll that off to less than 1%. And There we go. It should sound normal. And now technically we have a flanger now, I guess. It sounds more like a chorus to me. So what gives it that like flangey sound is the feedback. So this VCA is not open; it's closed. It's silent. There's no feedback right now. So what I will do is I'll turn it up and get some flange going. All right, more noticeably flangey sound. And the VCA, this is really the fine-tuning part where you can go kind of too crazy. Like if I go up much higher than that, I don't really want to use that sound. So the VCA level control of the VCA is really that, and the connection strength on the delay line time. The modulation of that is really what fine tunes your flange, and you can get some really nice subtle flanking if you lower the connection strength and the LFO speed. Generally, I've seen it recommended you go below 1 hertz on your LFO. So yeah, we're above 1. If we get it fast, it's really wobbly there. So I do like kind of a subtle kind of a more subtle flange. And that's the basics. So let me know. We'll pause right here and let me know if you have any questions on like the basic flange modulation thing. And I'm going to just fine tune it. And I'll put up the banner again for the flanger. And I made this at like late last night, so I probably just did something wrong.
No. Hey Mitch, what are you at CPU wise?
Oh yeah, so the CPU is at 9%. So it's really pretty CPU efficient to make a flanger this way. Can you get the jet sounds with this basic patch? Probably. I don't know really. Sorry, Charlie. I'm not really sure what the jet sounds, what kind of jet sounds you're looking for, but you can get weird with just. Gosh, you know what? That might sound better if I like backed off the mix a little bit. So since I've got a mix control, I'm gonna go to my second page. You can't see it because I've got this diagram up. Let's turn that off. And I'm gonna roll off the mix to only like 20%. And then maybe that crazy sounds, it sounds kind of cool. That's the sound, but with the mix down, yeah, I kind of like it. So
yeah, it is nice with the mix down lower because you can get like a really crazy sound that is just really subtle, but it like kind of works.
Right, like tasteful crazy, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
Tasteful crazy. I don't know.
Yeah, for the jet sounds question, I was kind of messing around earlier, trying to get that as well. I find that another thing that like I found changes the tone of it a lot is if you just like move the actual delay time like up or down. And I think a lot of pedals have that as like the manual is like the control that would be called, but I find that sometimes can make a big effect on it as well. And then the other thing is like I was messing around earlier and put just like heavy in front, and so distortion, and I feel like that's where the jet sound like becomes a lot more noticeable, because I saw that term like kept popping up on like everything about flangers. Everyone's like, oh, jet sounds, and like when you put something like a lot of distortion in front, that's whenever I find it sounds the most noticeable.
That's funny because I'm actually, my signal chain right now is just the heavy into the ZOIA.
Oh, cool.
But I've got it. This is low gain heavy.
Yeah, yeah.
Instead of like, because you can do high gain. I'll try it. Yeah, that sounds cool. With so yeah, good point, Taylor. That like distortion helps bring out the kind of. I've got a patch going too, so we can hear it with drums because I think this is just a modular patch that I think Flangers sound really cool with drums. So
phasers and flangers sound so good on drums.
Yeah, I don't know. It just gives it so much more character. But there's also like a polyphonic this default factory patch for the Euro Bureau that I made that does like polyphonic chords with 1 volt per octave. It's fun. So that was playing too. That's the chord sound. But yeah, so let's get into still trying to wrap your head around flange, chorus, and phaser. I think, yeah, the difference with phasers is they use all pass filters instead of delay lines to modulate to get your and so it's kind of it tends to be a more subtle sound than flange, in my opinion. And then flange and chorus isn't going to have, I think the big difference is chorus isn't going to have a feedback loop. So if this was a chorus, I would delete this VCA and just have this delay line out. And some people say you need the delay times also determine if it's flange chorus, where flanger is under, I think it's like 10, 20 seconds and chorus is over. So if I move this, I'm going to turn off this VCA, close it, so I move that, and turn up this, well, you can barely hear it because I have the mix down. Turn up the mix, and then turn up this delay time, so it's a longer delay, and this is technically, that's supposed to be a chorus. Yeah, it sounds really similar to flange to me, but it's also sometimes chorus you just modulate a pitch shifter instead of a delay too. But I guess any modulation of the pitch would be either one. Yeah, it's because the seasickness is because I've got the connection over 1%. So if I turn this down, I feel like that's more of a kind of classic chorusy sound if you have the connection, this delay line connection lower. And next, let's make this flange patch into kind of something. And if you patch noise into the wet, we'll play with that later. Let's see. Instead of feeding the signal back into the same delay, yeah, you could do this. It kind of makes a different. It doesn't make really the classic flange sound. It's more of, yeah, we'll experiment with it because we're gonna make a stereo. We're gonna make a stereo flange next. So I would recommend headphones, and if you have your ZOIA, feel free to patch along. I find that actually just getting in and patching, it helps me to be creative. I might not have a really strong idea for an effect until I get into it and start patching. And some people had asked in the past, like, why make patches from the basic modules instead of just placing them? And I think it's really helpful to. It's actually probably one of the most requested things that people asked, first of all. So a lot of people have asked to learn how to do this, and I think sometimes it can be advantageous for the CPU, and it's just kind of fun to get in and just make your own effects. Because we had this problem yesterday. Me and Mickey Bones were going through this and had to I had to just stop because I was like, oh, but what if we did this and what if we did this? And we could go on all these different tangents because I was completely open in that way. So, but with this class, I'm trying to stay really focused on specific aspects, or else we could just go off for hours and hours, and who knows. But we could probably make some cool stuff. Also, Michael, I'm going to call you Mickey Bones, since that's your name on here.
That's fine and hilarious.
Cool. Is that like your alter ego? Like if you're playing a show and you're out at night?
No, it was to like keep my family from finding me on Facebook like 10 years ago, and here we are.
Oh yeah, I had that.
They found me though.
I'm going to get back to flanging because if not, I'll just tell tangential stories. But I'm going to pause. I think that's my car.
Oh no.
I heard that. I was wondering if that was coming from Mitch's.
Yeah. I was muted, so I figured it was one of you guys. No rats. What have you been messing around with flanger patches on the ZOIA? I know I saw you plucking at the guitar before we started streaming here.
Yeah, I was playing with them more the last few days. I was kind of with Mitch too. Like I feel like I don't know. That would be like lower down just on my list of effects or patches that I'd like usually gravitate towards. So it's kind of fun just to dive in and just play with just flangers.
Yeah.
So yeah, I had some fun with it.
I agree.
Out of control.
Okay, I'm back. Sorry. Live. No, it's my neighbor's car. But yeah, so one thing I want to do before we get into the more complex patches is I've got this mix on the second page, but I want it on page 0. So what I would do is if I push page back and forth, I can bring up the page list, and page 1 is this this control page. So if I hit shift and copy on page 1, I can copy it before page 0, hit shift and save, and now I have that mix knob on page 0. I would probably also label this page by hitting, when I have these up, hitting shift plus the pen and paper and adding control, like saying control. So I know that's my control page. I would label this page. Labeling the pages, if you come back to a patch, is really helpful. And this page I'll label, that's my main, my audio. I'm just going to put an A because I want to get into it, but I would put audio, IO or something on this page. So now when I bring up the pages, I can see that's con, I can see that's audio. And yeah. Well, I couldn't move to page 0 because I had put my audio on page 0. So if I copy on a page before page 0, then it pushes page 0 to page 1. And let's get into like a more complicated flanger. So what I want to do this time is I want to add more control. First of all, I want this LFO out. Instead of having to push these 2 buttons every time and going from LFO out to delay line, I want to break that connection by hitting Shift and the trash can. And I want to add a control module, CV mixer. Shout out to Taylor, he made this module. It's a newer one. So if you don't have it, update your ZOIA. So I'm going to add a CV mixer, connect my LFO output to the input of the CV mixer, and then my CV mixer output, I'm going to connect to my delay line, delay time. And I'm going to connect that at the maximum I want it to connect to. I'm going to turn this all the way up so you can hear it. That's way too much. So the max I want it to be is like 2% of modulation. So that's the max. I'm going to add a value control modules value, and I'm going to connect that into this is the mix connection, and it's at 1. I'm going to put it back at 0 because I'm not going to use the mix connection anymore. I'm going to use this value module. So I'm going to connect the value output to the mixer in. I'm going to hit Shift plus edit, not on that one, on this value, Shift plus edit. I'm going to name that modulation amount. But for the sake of time, I'm just going to put the mod. And I'm going to put that on my first page, my control page. I'm going to hit Shift plus move the module to my control page. Now I have the mod amount, and I can control how strong that connection is between the amount of delay modulation. And at 1, it should be 2%. Let's do, like 3%. And I'm going to back up on that. Okay, let's see. Then the VCA, I want to add another interface module or control modules value, and I'm going to add a value to open up this VCA, and I'm going to label that my control, or I'm going to label that feedback, and that's going to control the amount of feedback on how open that delay line is, and that's pretty high. And then now we have some controls on this first control page to kind of mess with the beginning of our flanger. The other thing I want to do is I want to make this stereo, and there's a lot of different ways to make it stereo. Also, Mark, yeah, you're right. I could have just moved the page instead of copying and pasting. But let's go with let's copy this and make a stereo delay line. So I'm going to copy my first delay First of all, this one got a little crazy. Let's tone it down. And then I'm going to copy this delay. So I'm going to hit Shift plus the 2 pages and hit done. And I've copied all the delay lines because I didn't edit. So I'm going to do that again. Hit Shift plus copy. And then it says location of copy. I want to put it right below the other delay line. Connections. I only want the input connection, this. So I select inputs and hit done. And now this is connected, but it doesn't have a VCA. So control modules, audio modules, excuse me, VCA. And there we go. Now I have I'm going to connect this up like I did the other one. And I should have a stereo kind of flange. And I'm just double checking to make sure I've got it linear and the interpolation is on, because that will yield the best results for modulating.
Can you talk a bit about the interpolation feature? I'm sure some people would be curious about that.
Well, the best way for me to talk about it would be to just hit Shift and question mark on interpolation. Taylor could probably tell you more about it. So it frees up, because it's doing a lot more calculations when you have interpolation on, so it smooths your delay time modulation. That requires more CPU. So if you turn that off, you're going to get choppy modulation. It's not going to sound that good. It's good for a delay line that you have like a single point. Like if I have a second long delay line and I'm never changing it, then I could turn interpolation off. But when I have modulation, I want to keep it on, or it'll just sound not as good. I don't know, Taylor, if you have anything to add to that.
No, that's pretty clear. Yeah, just smooths it out.
But yeah, I always recommend just the Shift. Yeah, it only affects the delay time changes. It won't affect like the tone or the sound of any delay passing through if you're not modulating this. If you're not modulating this delay time interpolation, you can leave it on. But now we have a stereo flange, but it just sounds exactly the same. So I'm going to save this real quick because I'm going to mess it up. So I'm going to delete that mix that feedback amount I had, because I want to connect these two at different strengths. Actually, I could do that through the undo button. Don't forget about the undo button, because if you've been patching with ZOIA a long time, like me, you might forget about that it exists. And I re-added that, and I couldn't have done that like with firmware 1.8 or whatever. But it's really nice. So now I have a stereo flanger again. And it sounds the same on both sides. There's no stereo. So I could... Oh, you know what I did wrong? Or what I haven't done? I haven't edited the audio balance module. So if I hit Shift plus Edit, turn that to stereo, and then this connection, I need to delete the audio from the left and then just connect it up in stereo, basically. So now that the audio input would go to both audio in right and left on here, and then delay line out will go to audio in to left. The second delay line will go to audio out to right. And now we have a stereo flange sound. It's a pretty crazy one. I'm going to turn it down just a little bit, the LFO. Okay, I like that. And what I can do is edit right now I have delay times that are offset. So the first one's a much faster delay, and the second one's a little slower, and it gives you that like off style effect. And the other thing I'm doing is changing the feedback levels on each one. So since I copied the inputs, I messed that up. Since I copied the inputs of the delay line, I have this VCA that I don't want connected to that second one. There we go. Now I can change the feedback level on one and have them feeding back. So one side's getting like more of a flange with the VCA level controls being offset and different. And then there was a question about like feeding delay lines into different ones. So what if I swap delay lines, like this delay feeds into this VCA, but then it goes into this delay line, and this delay line goes into the other VCA. What's that going to sound like? We can try it and see what it sounds like. So I'm just going to connect these to this, break this connection. So now that one needs to go into the one above it. Oh, well, that sounds the same because they're still only going into one VCA. So what if I do both? Oh, see, that turns red. That means it's feeding back. So that would have killed our ears if I didn't have this internal kind of leveling control. It sounds kind of cool. You have to be mindful of the feedback. We're basically doubling the signal at this point since I'm connecting this audio into both of these. Yeah, you can always experiment with different kind of flange sound. So if I don't even feed back this one at all, let's say the first delay line isn't being fed back at all, and it's only feeding back into this second delay line. How's that sound? Yeah, you still get a flangey kind of sound. And yeah, there's so many different ways you could set this up and experiment with it. It's a lot of fun. So initially, flange was like a tape effect. So let's before I get into anything else, let's cover a couple more questions because I want to dive into like making this a unique kind of effect. But yeah. Linear versus exponential. Yeah, I think linear sounds more like your classic flange sound, but exponential, I don't think it sounds bad. I actually had I was experimenting with one stereo where it had exponential in one ear, linear in the other, and it sounded kind of cool. And yeah, you're right. And so I think that's we've covered all the questions. So I'm going to get into like randomizing parameters and kind of creating different unique effects. So with the LFO, so since it's like this was originally an analog effect. There were a lot of random things happening because, yeah, it was tape, or maybe double tracking like a tape would give you the flange sound. So if I want more of an analog kind of sound, I think of like slightly randomizing and humanizing things. So I'm going to start with the LFO. And if I select the LFO, hit Shift and where is it? Swing control. I can add a swing control to my waveform. If I hit the output, hit Shift plus the eyeball, you can see the triangle wave. If I move the swing control, it swings how the waveform is shaped, and that will give you kind of a different modulation. So what I want to do now is I'm going to actually delete the CV mixer, and I'm going to try to actually I don't want to delete the CV mixer. Undo button is my friend again. I want to add some randomness to the swing. So what I want to add is a control module random and new value on trig. So yes, I want a new value. Say every time this starts to go high, I want a new value. So I'm going to connect the LFO output to the random trigger in. Now that random trigger will change every time that triangle wave goes high or starts to go high. And I could connect this to the swing control. And if I've got 100, I connected it at 100. I don't want to do that. I want to tame it. I just want a little bit of randomness, say 6%. And you'll see it's making kind of weird wave shapes. So what I want to do to smooth that out is I'm going to delete this connection, and I'm going to add a control module filter, CV filter, excuse me, which will smooth out that random change so it's not jumpy. So you can see that that's the random, and it's kind of smoothing it out. And then I'm going to connect that to the duty cycle, the swing control in, but not at 100%. I want it to go, let's do 20%. And I actually want it to move to the left and right of my bias point. So right now it's just going from that bias point, it's going up. And I want it to go, sometimes I want it to swing in the other direction. So what I want to do is go back to my random module, hit Shift plus Edit, and then change the output to -1 to 1. Now the range will be, it'll send negative and positive values. Let's see. And you can see we've got a pretty interesting wave shape there. And let's see what modulate. Yeah, you can fine tune this and get basically whatever kind of wave. Let's turn up the modulation amount so we can hear that random. You can hear it go up and down kind of. That's kind of extreme. I wouldn't have it up that much, but yeah, that's just one way to kind of that's just one thing to randomize. So you could keep randomizing, like we could randomize the modulation strength too, the same exact way. So this is it's not being modulated as heavy. Sometimes it is, sometimes less. which would be another way to give it more of an organic feel. So we could just, I'm going to copy this random module because I want a different kind of random. No connections. I'm going to change the time of that too. So how deep do we want to go into this? So we could get really, like, we could add a clock divider and have this random change at half the speed of the other random. So I'm going to do that. I'm just going to move this LFO or this random here. I'm going to put control modules. And I didn't do this before. This is just like one of those things that kind of come up of like, well, what can I do as I'm patching? Like, how can I make this unique? So I'm going to put the clock divider input, the LFO output into the clock divider input, and it's let's see, it's giving me too fast of a pulse really because of the randomness of the modulation. But actually it's kind of interesting. So it's speeding up, sometimes slowing down. Let's slow the clock divider down. So start at 1, 1, and let's start dividing it. Okay, now it's really slow, really fast. Sometimes your experiments just don't work and you can just delete them. And I'm just going to add an LFO instead for ease of use, a square wave, so I can control the rate of modulation a lot easier because I didn't like, it was going to make it too crazy if I add. So what I'm going to do now is I've got an LFO output. I'm going to connect that to my random trigger in, and I want it to have a random trigger at every 35 BPMs, but maybe a little bit more random. I'm going to connect the random output to the LFO CV in, but only at like 6%. This is going to give me a more random kind of BPM range where I'm getting, you'll see, like sometimes I'm getting 20 BPMs, 19, but it's not completely wild. Oh yeah, Max Crazy's coming out today. This is kind of where I wanted to go, where it's a little deeper than the last few. We did get Flangers done. We got that under control, but like diving into like the different ways you can make the flanger your own is really what I'm excited about. So I'm randomizing this LFO just a little bit to get this random, and it's feeding back into itself, which is great. And again, one thing that the ZOIA can do that I don't know anything else that can is it can handle feedback loops like this. So there's my random out. I want to filter that again. And I'm going to add a CV filter. So I'm going to smooth out that random with a CV filter. And I'm going to connect the random output to the CV filter in. Bring up the time to like 500 milliseconds. And now I've got a slow kind of change. And then what can we connect this to? There's actually a few things we could do. We could connect it to the VCAs to make the feedback a little more random. So I'm going to try that. So the filter output, I'm going to connect to the VCA level control. Definitely not at 100%. Let's do 5% and see what it looks like. You can see the VCA feedback is changing now, and I want this one to change as well. Since we're in stereo, I'll connect that random output to this VCA level input. let's have more modulation on, less modulation on this one and more on the first, or more randomization. So now the amount of feedback I'm getting is also random. And yeah, it's pretty cool. I might want to like slow it down. So I could always just, that random LFO that slightly random. I don't know if something can be like, the amount of randomness introduced is, I might want to turn that down a little bit from 3%, and then the LFO is not going to be quite as fast. I might slow this LFO down a little bit too, because it is being randomized. It's actually a little bit faster than it says it is. What else do I want to randomize? I want to randomize my connection strength between the modulation and the delay line time and the LFO. So my modulation amount, I want that a little bit more randomized. And to do that, I had this CV mixer with a value control that was controlling my modulation amount. We'll set it about right there. And then I'm going to connect that random again to my CV mixer attenuator input. And we'll just connect it at like 20%. So there's a 20% fluctuation of randomness that could occur in the connection. And now we have all these different things changing. And yeah, it sounds fun. I actually made one that sounds better, just testing it. And I'm going to name this so I can remember to upload the examples. I'll just name it Flan. And oh yeah, so here's my other randomized waveform stereo flanger, which is kind of the same, using the same concepts as the other one, but a little more subtle, because I had time to dial it in. You guys have any questions or comments on that part? Cool. See, you can see the random LFO on this one is kind of a little more subtle. So you don't have the kind of extreme, well, I think of it as kind of an extreme effect, but it's fine. Oh, this one also has, you could add like a pitch shifter in the feedback path, and on one channel, you might hear like a little bit of pitching up because I've got a pitch shifter, and I could turn it up and you'll hear it like, since it's in the feedback path. So the way I connected it was from the VCA. I'll show you this again. From the VCA, you see that feedback path. In that feedback loop from the VCA to the delay line, I added a pitch shifter. And if I turn it up, here it's continually rising. It's not just rising once because it's feeding back. It's continually rising. It's not crazy. But if I modulate that, randomize that, or add whatever you want, dynamics, anything. I don't know if that's really what, I don't know if I want a pitch shifter. I'm going to turn it off. But yeah, that's kind of one way to randomize things. The other thing is noise. So with a flanger, you might, if you're using tape, you might have like a lot of noise. And there's a lot of ways you can add noise. One way I would add noise is, I would add an audio module and a noise module, but that's not all. Definitely not. Oh yeah, how easy is it to make randomness values assignable to a foot switch? I would just put a CV switch, and then real quick, I'll show you. Control modules, CV, in switch. There's an audio switch and a CV switch. So control modules switch is going to take CV. Audio modules audio switch is going to take audio. So 2 inputs done. I would leave. Actually, you don't even need 2 inputs. 1 input of a switch. Control modules. Random. Where is it? So I would connect your random module into the CV input 1, and then interface modules stop switch. So, and then connect that to your input switch on off. And now when I hold the stop switch, I get the random pass through. So fairly straightforward to control anything with a stop switch. One thing you might consider, especially with audio, is this is a pretty drastic change from 0 to random. So I would either use a VCA to fade it in, or since this is audio, I would use a CV mixer. So control modules, CV mixer. I'm going to set it to, it's at 0 right now. And if I connect this stop switch, it's just going to go 1. It's going to go 0, 1. If I add a control module CV filter or slew limiter, it's going to smooth that out. So I'm going to connect the stop switch in. I'm going to connect the random out to the mixer input. I'm going to connect the stop switch input to the CV filter input, turn up the time, connect that see the CV filter output. If you watch when oh no.
Oh no.
I changed the preset. Save often. Anyway, you connect the CV input to the filter, and then you hold the stop switch. Instead of going 0 to 1, it will slowly rise to smooth out your transition. So you're not going straight from the random off on. It will, smooth it out. And so next, I think that pretty much covers it. The next, let's add some noise to our flange with an audio module noise. So I might want to filter my noise. So I would add an effect module filter. Actually, they're just audio modules. There's the SV filter and the multi-filter. The multi-filter has like multiple options: low pass, low shelf. I want a high shelf filter. So a high shelf is just going to, instead of cutting, like maybe next time it would be nice to have like a drawing. Instead of cutting the volume completely, a shelf filter will just bring it down like a literal shelf. If you think like volume's up here, a shelf filter will step it down to here, and then Oh no, I blew up the patch. I hope I explained it, and I'm happy to answer any questions. That's kind of what the whole the live stream's for. So I'm glad you asked, and I hope it answered it. So a high shelf, I don't want too much high-end noise, so I'm just going to shelve it down instead of cutting it completely. A high pass or a low pass would just cut the high end completely. So I'm going to add this noise into a multi-filter input. The multi-filter output, I want to go into a VCA because I want control, because noise is noisy. And I want control of that noise. We'll start by just patching the noise up into the audio input and output, and then we'll play with like putting it in the feedback line, the feedback loop. But yeah, that's noise. So I can boost or cut that high end of the noise, and then I can, so I want to cut it below like 2000 hertz maybe, because that, you know, if you, I'm not like, I'm into like, I think, I'm just not even going to go into how the ear resonates louder at some frequencies, but below 2000 hertz, the resonance of the ear, I say I'm not going to do it and I do it, we perceive volume, some volume louder than other. So, and I think it's good to account for like equal loudness contours. If you just look up the equal loudness contour chart and check out, because it's really interesting. It's kind of anything above a certain frequency we think is louder than it actually is. And it's good to take account of that in the ZOIA. So for noise, I want to cut everything below like 2000 hertz. Not cut it, I want to shelve it down. So I'm shelving it 17 dB, reducing the gain. If I boost it, you can hear the not particularly pleasant to me. So now I just have like straight noise going nonstop. I don't want just noise all the time. What I could do is add like, I want chopped up noise that's randomized. So I could add a granular module and then run my noise instead of into the granular after my filter, and then into the VCA. And then I could edit kind of the density and like the texture and even the pitch, so I could drop that noise down so it's still a little lower. And then I have, you know, maybe some kind of weird scraping noise, but it's not static. You can see it's kind of granular, but it's all the same. And I don't feel like it's, again, the random thing. I don't feel like noise would always be the same like this. So I'm going to add a random module, and I'm going to just randomize some parameters of this noise. New value on trigger. So I want to add, I'm going to connect it to an LFO because I want it sending random values on the trigger. And then again, I want that it evened out and slewed. So I'm going to have a CV filter. I'm going to connect my noise output to a CV filter. And then also, I'm going to edit that. I want it 0 to 1. So when I have it -1 to 1 instead of 0 to 1, my bias point will be the center point, and I'll modulate to each side. So for example, if density is at 50%, and I connect this random module at 10%, it can modulate to each side, to the left and the right of the bias point, by up to 10% on each side. So if I had it at 100%, that's going to be no good because I'm going to modulate way past, that point is only, the bias point is only 50% from the side. So I could potentially, 50% of the time I could be going over 1 and over 0, and I don't want to do that. So I just want a little bit of modulation there. I want another random. I don't want all the same randoms randomizing everything, and this will get a new value. I'm going to connect this random module output to this random module trigger input. So it should only go high when you get a random module higher than, now I'm getting kind of complicated, but if this random module goes to a number that's lower than what it's at, so when it goes high, it will randomize the second random module, but not when it goes low. I hope that makes sense. Just, it's one of those just things that I actually haven't spent much time considering. I'm just patching, and that seems like a fun thing to do. But I'm going to connect that second random module to the grain texture. So now I've still got, it's a little too, I'm going to connect it to the grain size as well. And now you can see I've got some kind of randomized noise here. I don't know if I like the grain size being modulated, but leave the grain position, let's see. Yeah, so I've got kind of a random modulation going now. There's still a little bit of a pattern. I'm going to randomize the pitch too. That might be. Yeah. Okay. That's one way to do it. It might take some fine tuning to get something that you are satisfied with. But again, the point is just that randomizing these things can really make it much more interesting texture. Going crazy random all the time, I don't want that. Say I want it only when I play the guitar. I can just add some dynamics. So I'm going to add a effect module. Nope, analysis module. So I want an envelope follower. And that's going to, I'm going to connect that to my audio input. And that's going to, I'm going to connect that envelope follower output to the VCA of the noise. So I've turned the noise off now. Now when I play, I get noise too. Too much noise, honestly. So what I'll do is I'll select that connection and I'll turn it down. So now we're at, now we have a little bit of subtle noise when I play. It's still not too subtle, but the noise seems kind of random. There we go, that's probably the amount of noise I would want. But it cuts off pretty sharply when the effect off. Max Crazy is here. Yeah. So I want to slow down the fall time. So what I'll do is I'll hit edit, shift plus edit on the envelope follower. Rise fall time, I want to change to on. And done. So now I can kind of, the fall time's only, so many milliseconds. I'm going to turn that up so that you can now hear the volume of this this noise phase out. Yeah, so I feel like that's kind of a smoother noise thing. And there's, man, we had we have a lot of stuff to cover today, and I don't think we're going to get to it all because there's still more I want to do. But we'll just have to push it to the next delay line talk, because I wanted to do kind of. I think I'll just show you an example. I'm actually going to save this because I like it. But yeah, there's so many different ways you can randomize and change things, and just getting in there and experimenting and patching. And yeah, this one wasn't really planned, and I like it. Yeah, and this is probably a little repetitive because I do have it. I developed a randomization of the noise, so you could do more random LFOs. If you have them on trigger, then they're going to be they're going to be like clocked random. That's why I randomized the LFO on that last random patch where the time isn't always the same. And I could go back and do that on this too, where I'm like, okay, I'm just going to connect this CV filter output to my LFO time in. So, and this is my main LFO. It's controlling it's controlling almost everything. And I'm going to turn the randomization down to 3%. And now you'll see the BPMs, which probably still won't be drastic as far as the. Okay. There's that. The other thing I'll show you really quickly. Well, actually, I'll take questions. If anybody has any more questions about this, or if Taylor or Michael, you have anything to say about it?
I'm, again, just curious, with all the stuff you have going on now, what's the CPU at? It's always curious to see.
Now it's at 60%. And this has a stereo. This has kind of 3 pages. It's got a stereo, delay, flanger. And then the granular is taking up probably a lot of the CPU on this. If I cut the granular module, I could just use a VCA and some filters and probably get it down to 40%. But it's also, the reason it's kind of pushing it is because I'm randomizing all the parameters on the granular, so it's using a lot more processing power.
Yeah, I really like the noise. I've never just played with noise that much. Yeah, I just need to a granular and randomizing. There was a few times here you hit it where I was like, well, I could spend a few minutes just messing around with that.
Yeah, it's really fun to. The noise is a useful, if you step out of just using noise as noise straight into a VCA, then it can get really interesting if you add some effects to it. And, yeah. I mean, I think filtering your noise is key, because you don't want a bunch of high-pitched noise in your signal. It's just, I think the lower frequency noise is it's kind of a little more pleasant. And this, even, I've got it pitched way down. I've got the noise pitched down. So if I pitch it up, I don't think so. But even if I turn it down a little lower, that's kind of bedtime. It's some bedtime noise, maybe.
Yeah, you could almost make you hear it turning into waves crashing on a beach.
That's exactly what I was thinking. It sounds like waves crashing on a shore.
Yeah, I feel if you played with the filter envelopes and stuff of that, you could totally get that sound.
Yeah,
Anyways, that's cool.
also,
I've never just like done noise into like a granular, so I'm gonna be playing with that after.
I hadn't either actually until this week, and so I'm really grateful that we're doing this because it's provided me like more creative time to like have fun patching. But you could like I could randomize like the multi-filter gain. Okay, that's gonna feed it back because it's 100%. Man, I'm really glad they added the feedback protection. But like I could like the noise level, the amount of noise could be randomized. Or like the amount of low end, high end. So now I'm not getting the high end. Yeah, there's just it's so fun because like there's so many different ways you could mess with this patch and make it unique. So that's it. I almost forgot. We were going to do a new thing. I mentioned it in the email, and then I got so into patching that I forgot to talk about it, which was we want to do like a homework kind of thing where if you all if you make a flanger after this and make something different than what we've created, send it to us. And if you want to just send the patch, you can send it to me, media@empresseffects.com. You can just respond to the ZOIA the ZOIA emails that I send out. You can just reply to that. But if you make a patch and share it with me, I'll pick, depending on how many there are, I'll pick a few to feature on the next. We'll pick a few to feature on the next installment, and then you can, if we pick yours, we'll make you an official Zoyan. And that's we have like a pin. I don't have one on me. Taylor, do you have the Zoyan pin?
I don't have mine close by either now.
Why aren't you wearing it?
I had it on as my sweater before.
Yeah.
I took it off, I swear.
Next week, make sure to wear your Zoyan pin because we will give a couple away if you if you send me your flangers. And we will feature some too to see if this helps you or how it's going. But yeah, I'm actually we didn't get to, so I'm going to add one more delay line class because we switched it up, and next week Taylor's doing monosynth, so we have some space. So I want to focus on delay lines as delay repeats. So we'll add that class, and in that class we'll also oh yeah, you get a ZOIA certificate too, a ZOIA official ZOIA certificate if you send it. Yeah, I hope you guys do it. It'll be fun.
It's not just Zoyan, but first class Zoyan is what we call it.
Oh yeah, Zoyan first class. Sorry.
Yeah,
everyone is a Zoyan. That's it. Thanks, Taylor. Zoyan first class, and yeah, it's pretty cool. The other thing I didn't get to was ducking flangers. So I'm just going to show you real quick how what I kind of made a makeshift compressor out of VCAs. So I input your VCA and then putting a flanger, putting the output into the VCA. I can control how and we'll just get into this. We'll get into this on the delay line. The delay line class because it's a little bit to explain. But yeah, just inverting an envelope follower into a VCA, and then if I can really squelch it if I adjust the connection strength. The deadline for submitting patches. Interesting. Thanks, Mark. I think it's because we're having some audio. Okay. Do you lose my voice now? Because I changed the audio settings. Good to know, though. I'll look at the audio settings for next week, so you don't lose my voice. But the deadline for submitting patches is next Friday. Cool. That was okay. So next Friday, it'll be ongoing. So every week you can submit patches. I would say technically there's no deadline until the end of the bootcamp. But each week we'll focus on the weeks before. But if you make a killer Flanger patch in 2 weeks and want to send it in, that's okay too. But yeah, I should probably just stop playing guitar. Something about having a guitar in your hands while you're talking. I just have to play it. But yeah, I'm gonna test this drum kit out on. Oh yeah, that's what we were gonna do. Excuse me. I think we had requests for Max Crazy to end the show last week, and I didn't do it. So this week I think we'll get into ducking next time, Mickey. But this week we're going to play you out with Max Crazy, and I don't know how it'll go, but we'll just, if it gets too bad, we're just gonna cut the stream. And Taylor, I forgot. I don't know if you have a guitar ready. I forgot. Michael and I planned this before you came to the stream.
Jam. That's cool. I'll sit and listen to this one.
Okay. Next time. Well, I was trying to get Taylor to do every. That would take too much time, but to do every instrument with guitar with like a synth sound. Because Taylor makes these really cool songs where he sings and plays every instrument to a cover. It's awesome. But so I was like, you should do it with ZOIA.
The challenge.
But yeah, someday.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Michael, you have a flanger?
I got a subtle flanger. I'm not at max crazy though.
Okay.
And there's some delay.
Yeah. That's something we haven't even gotten into, which is like mixing effects together. But hopefully next boot camp. That sounds great.
I'm surprised it's just my laptop microphone.
Wow. There's my contribution. It's just the sequencer. I play the sequencer. Let's go. There's my stereo flange. This is the simplest flanger. It's just 2 delay lines. No LFO. And I can still make it pretty Where's my jet line? Okay, I think we've demonstrated plenty of different ways to flang. And yeah, that was a lot of fun. And I look forward to seeing you all next week. Next week it's Taylor with mono guitar synths. So come back. I've got a second ZOIA that is just a mixer. Again. It's double ZOIAs. You guys have anything to say before we go?
This is just a lot of fun, and I'm glad to be a part of it. This is it's cool to kind of showcase the more complex aspects of the ZOIA for everybody.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's a good excuse too, just to sit down and just patch. Like I've never spent this much time just like playing around with flangers. So
yeah,
it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I agree. I hope we can get the more this goes on, the deeper into this stuff we can get, and the more complex and fun the patches.
Exactly. Yeah, I like how it's so focused each week too on just like one effect, like because you could easily just be like, oh, let's throw in like delays now too and stuff. That's like level 2. We'll get there. It's kind of nice just to because you can like what we've been hour and a half on just.
Yeah, an hour and a half on flange and noise, and I didn't even finish. I didn't get to everything I wanted to say. So, it's helpful for me to, and I'm sure people watching too, to have like more of a focus on one thing. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. So, thank you, Michael, Taylor, everybody that participated and watched. And see you soon.
Thanks, everybody.
See you guys.